Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Josie's Point of View, where we focus on human interest stories from the Carolinas and beyond. Today it's Wednesday and it's May the 29th, 2024. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're new to my channel, I want to thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you find the information here to be informative. And if you're a returning viewer, by all means, thank you for coming back. I always say the tide changes so frequently on these YouTube streets. So you always have to acknowledge where your support comes from. And I want you to know I sincerely thank you for your support. Feel free to like and to share this video. And don't forget to subscribe. Our video today is entitled Two Fort Liberty Paratroopers Charged with Murder, but They're Not Being Treated the Same. I'll provide you with a summary here and I'll identify some of my sources for you in the description box. Now, the first case is about an incident that actually took place on the base at Fort Liberty, and here's that headline. And it reads, Fort Liberty soldier charged with murder in death of his infant daughter. Well, we've known about this case since last year. It's been several months. And, many of us were wondering if the military, in this case, whether Fort Liberty was going to ignore the facts as reported by the medical examiner. But recent events simply shows that sometimes you just don't know what's going on behind the scene, and you have to allow legal authorities to get things in order. And in this case, we are pleased to see that finally someone, meaning a soldier, is going to be held accountable for the death of a young child. And we're speaking about the death of an 8-month-old. Her name is Misty. She was a toddler who was simply caught in the middle of a contentious custody battle between her parents, one of whom was a military soldier at Fort Liberty. Now, the relationship between the parents was now unrepairable, and there were custody decisions to be made. Now, the judge overseeing the case, I'm sure, intended to appease both parents, and he most likely did what he believed was in the best interest of the child when he afforded them 50-50 joint custody. One half of the time, baby Misty would be with her mom, and the other 50% of the time she would be with her dad. But exactly 3 days after she was handed over to her father, in compliance with the judge's arraignment, baby Misty was severely injured and she eventually died. And that's where we're picking up on this video. And the baby's father was Army Sergeant Gabriel Ceville, a paratrooper assigned to the 82nd Airborne Division here at Fort Liberty. We don't know how long he had been here at Fort Liberty, and his unit of assignment was not mentioned, but in February of 2023, he was residing on the base at Fort Liberty with a spouse that was different from the child's mother, and per the custody agreement, the baby daughter, Misty, was in his custody. The child's mother was residing in another state. And we really don't know just how much preparation the dad had before receiving baby Misty. But as you know, these little ones can get rather fussy. And when they get fussy, you'd better figure out how to calm them down. And as already mentioned, it was day 3 into this custody arrangement, and baby Missy was fussy. Reports say Sergeant Ceville had texted the child's mother saying that the baby girl was screaming and that he had a headache. And she was probably screaming because she wanted that special touch she had grown to know from her mom. So the first text was that she was screaming and that his head hurt. And in a follow-up text, she informed the mom that baby Misty had thrown up and that she was unresponsive. And we don't know how long he waited, but sometime after those texts, Sergeant Ceville eventually called 911 to report that his daughter was not breathing. When responders arrived, they transported the baby first to a local hospital, and due to her injuries, she was airlifted to UNC in Chapel Hill, where doctors reported that she was suffering from multiple, and I say multiple injuries, and these injuries included injuries to her eyes, her spine, her head, and her neck. They said she had multiple bleeds in her eyes and in her brain. And these injuries were fatal because a few days later, Misty died as a result of what she had experienced. Now, Sergeant Ceville, he had a difficult time explaining what happened to the baby because now there's a death investigation. And his only explanation to authorities was that the baby was crying and he slapped her on the back to clear her throat. Yeah, that's what he said. The baby was crying and he slapped her on her back to clear her throat. So immediately now he's under suspicion because these injuries happened in while he was caring for her. But the authorities had to wait on the medical examiner's office to complete an autopsy in order to get a definitive cause as to why she died. But in the meantime, he could not respond to family members who were demanding answers as to what happened to baby Misty. Why was she now deceased? And when he could not provide a good explanation, they beat him up. Allegedly, they beat him up. I should mention that Sergeant Ceville was never arrested. He was simply under suspicion. And now fast forward to January of this year when the autopsy findings were finally released and the medical examiner's office confirmed that Misty's death was a homicide. The report stated that she died from blunt force trauma to her head and neck, and investigators concluded that foul play was suspected. They compared her injuries to those of someone who had been in a terrible car crash. Without question, the death was by homicide, and all eyes were pointed at her dad, Army Paratrooper Gabriel Ceville. And here are two headlines about this case. The first one says a soldier complained his 8-month-old baby wouldn't stop screaming, then he allegedly beat her to death. That was the first one, and it talks about the fact that, infant had so many hemorrhages that doctors could not count them and likened her fatal injuries to those suffered in a car crash. Now, the second headline says baby death ruled a homicide, soldier investigation, and in this one, it says that he was contacted and he did acknowledge that he was under investigation. And despite all of the information that Fort Liberty had on this paratrooper, he was still not arrested. It took Fort Liberty 3 more months after the autopsy results were revealed. It took them another 3 months before they decided to take action against Missy's accused killer. By then, it was 15 months since the baby died, and Sergeant Ceville was free to come and go as he pleased. But in April, the U.S. Army's Office of the Special Trial Counsel recommended that he be charged with unpremeditated murder, involuntary manslaughter, and domestic violence. It was mentioned that the domestic violence charge was not related to baby Misty, but it had to do with a separate incident. So it seems like Sergeant Ceville had been in trouble with the law before. It seems as if he had a serious anger management problem, and I have to say, allegedly. So now things are slowly moving towards a court martial. A preliminary hearing took place earlier this month, and we're still awaiting notification of his trial date. But in the meantime, Sergeant Ceville has not been detained. He's not in custody. He is still allowed to move around freely as he awaits his trial. And I did search the court docket, but I did not find any information about an upcoming court martial. Now, there was no entry for him, and it's possible that they're still working, trying to finalize those details. But I'll continue to check on this because this is one of the cases that I would like to sit in and observe for myself, but I'll let you know what I find. So the case we just discussed took place on the base at Fort Liberty, and I want to share with you another case that happened around the same time. This one happened just a few weeks later, but it was off post in the city of Fayetteville, and the distance between Fort Liberty and the Fayetteville location was about 5 miles in about 10 minutes. And the date of this report was March 23rd, 2023, exactly 1 month after the previous case, and the headline read, Fort Liberty soldier charged with murder and death of girlfriend's infant son. And the soldier involved in this case is 27-year-old Joseph Nehemiah King, a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division, and he was residing in an off-base residence in Fayetteville at the time of this incident. And he was arrested in late March and charged with first-degree murder in the death of his girlfriend's 20-month-old son, and his name was Mason. Now, the specifics of the case as outlined in the arrest warrant are similar to what was provided earlier. It states that King was alone with a toddler when the child sustained multiple blunt force injuries to his head and neck. It was reported that the mother had left for work earlier in the day and she had left King, who was the boyfriend. He was left behind as the babysitter for the child. Now, the child's body was discovered by a relative who had come to visit the family. So it appears the child may have already been deceased when the family member arrived. But what is obvious is that the child nonetheless had been injured while in the care of King, and he never did seek medical attention. The arrest warrant also revealed that baby Mason had multiple cuts, bruises, and scrapes all over his body, and those injuries were not there when the child's mother left for work earlier that day. The baby's injuries included bleeding in his spine, a fractured bone in his upper right arm, as well as bleeding in his brain. Now, the autopsy findings confirm what had already been suspected, that baby Mason's death was a result of blunt force trauma to his head and neck. Because of the injuries sustained by this toddler, the death was ruled a homicide, and the only suspect was the babysitter for that day, Paratrooper Joseph Nehemiah King. And King was promptly arrested 2 days after the death of baby Mason, and his charges include first-degree murder. He was taken to the Cumberland County Detention Center where bond was denied. So here we have two paratroopers who are accused of similar crimes. One took place on post, while the other happened just 10 minutes away in the city. Both are facing murder charges, yet one is locked up and denied bond, while the other is treated more or less as if there's a presumption of privilege. It seems as if he is accused of murder, yet he's allegedly being treated as a celebrity. It took 15 months before anyone at Fort Liberty bothered to even charge him. It made it difficult for the mom and the grandmother to grieve for that baby because they felt that justice was being denied. The person allegedly responsible was free to go and come as he pleased, and even though he is being charged now, 15 months later, he's still not detained. He's being free to come and go as he please. And in the second case, the accused is promptly locked up and denied bond as he awaits trial. I wonder how Fort Liberty can allow an accused killer of a toddler, who is also charged with domestic violence, how they can justify him roaming around as he awaits trial. To say I'm disappointed in Fort Liberty is really an understatement at this point. Maybe Fort Liberty should take a few lessons from the Fayetteville police. They saw the problem, it was substantiated by the facts, and they promptly took action. The message being sent is that the military, i.e., Fort Liberty, that they are soft on crime, that it's a place where criminals can continue to roam freely. Don't get me wrong, I certainly don't believe that Paratrooper King should be taken out of the jail in Fayetteville as he awaits trial. Absolutely not. But Sergeant Ceville should be locked up as well. And it appears to me that the military should hold its soldiers to a much higher standard. That's the way it used to be. Those used to be the core values that we had, but sometimes, somewhere along the line, things have changed. It seems like now it's a different army, and it's really very disappointing. And that's all I have for you right now, but feel free to leave me a comment below and let me know what you think about this video, and by all means, feel free to like it and to share it. And if you haven't done so already, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel by clicking on that red subscribe button. It's on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if you click on the bell that looks like just like this one, that's the notification bell. If you click on that notification bell, you'll be the first to know whenever a new video is uploaded. I thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.